Thank you for your kind attention. And now, without further ado, I will hand over the proceedings to our chairman, Mr. Kumar Nadesan.
So he was a champion of press freedom at that time. I'm not sure about now, but at that time he was a champion of press freedom. And his father, Espen Vikram Singer, was a prominent figure in the press industry. And he was awarded the Golden Pen Award for Press Freedom by the International Press Institute. So we have since progressed, and we're here where we are. The core objective is to advocate for media freedom, democracy, and good governance through professionalism in journalism. The affiliated organizations of SFPI are the South Asia Free Media Association, short for SAFMA, the Tamil Media Alliance, the Sri Lanka Muslim Media Forum, and the Federation of Media Employees Trade Union. And our associate institutions are the Sri Lanka College of Journalism, which offers systematic training for journalists, and the Press Complaints Commission, which promotes self-regulation in the print media. Now that I've introduced myself, let me introduce you to the audience. His Excellency High Commissioner Santosh is a graduate of the University of Delhi and the Jawaharlal Nehru University. He is a career diplomat with over 28 years of experience in the Indian Foreign Service. He has many friends in Colombo since the High Commissioner has served as Commercial Counselor in Sri Lanka from 2007 to 2010. The High Commissioner has also served as Ambassador of India to the European Union, Belgium and Luxembourg before taking up his assignment in Colombo. Previously, he served as Ambassador of India in Uzbekistan and as Deputy Chief of Mission at the Indian Embassy in Washington. Moreover, he has held key positions in the Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi, including as Head of Division of Human Resources, Division of Relations with Western Europe and European Union, and Policy Planning Divisions. Mr. Shah has played a key role in strengthening India's bilateral relations with Belgium and the European Union, and in promoting trade and investment between India and Belgium. Perhaps that is one of the reasons why he has been appointed as High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, in recognition of his diplomatic skills and experience. He is expected to play a key role in further strengthening India's relations with Sri Lanka. In a statement by the Ministry of External Affairs, it was said that High Commissioner Shah's appointment is a reflection of the strong ties between India and Sri Lanka. I might also mention that the High Commissioner is a recipient of the Indian Foreign Service Award for Excellence. That is our guest today. Your Excellency, it's a very easy questions, and I would ask the audience to keep any questions to the relevant title that you have up there. So I will begin the first question. I was in India recently, just a few days ago, and I had to travel through Bangalore. And looking at the airport, their scanning systems, their custom systems, their security systems, and on the road, though the traffic was horrendous, the cars that we saw were astonishing. Now, I remember a time before when people came to Sri Lanka from India, they spoke about the cars that they found on the Sri Lankan roads. You know, the Mercedes and the what have you. But today on the Indian roads, it's astonishing to see these cars. So I wonder whether this is to do with leadership, with industrialization, with health, with education. What would you have to say to this? Because it clearly is a matter of reform, transform and perform. So what would you say, please?
No, thank you, first of all, for inviting me here. So before I come to the topic that you raised, let me thank the Sri Lanka Press Institute, also you personally, for inviting me. I must explain to the audience that the origin of this was a conversation I had with him, where he felt that what I was saying should reach the broader audience, and that is the basic purpose of this exercise today. I have come here recently, less than 3 months in the city of Colombo, but I must say that I came here with the expectation of the warmth that is usually very high in Sri Lanka, but even by those expectations I have been overwhelmed. So thank you all for coming in such large numbers to listen to whatever little I have to say. Look, when you say today's India, we are talking about not just the transformation in the cities or in one aspect of India. There is a very comprehensive sort of an approach for building up India in what is known as the most comprehensive build-up of national strength. So every aspect, whether it is rural or urban, whether it is industrial or the India's known strength in services or agriculture, whether we talk about today's modern emerging technologies, AI, the 5G technology or the revolution in the digital domain that we all are talking about globally. On each of these aspects, you are finding a tremendous transformation. It is built on, of course, the leadership, which has a vision, a long-term vision. The Prime Minister, for example, has recently announced a vision for Viksit Bharat, which is developed India, which we hope to achieve that status by 2047 when we celebrate 100 years of our independence. So it is something that has not happened by chance, for sure. There is a lot of strategy that has gone into it, and multiple factors that have determined it. But if I was to just simplify it, there is this huge infrastructure and investment initiative. There is a big talent boom, and for which India is already known, but even bigger things to come. And there is this whole ecosystem being created in India to enable investments to come, not just in infrastructure, but all of the areas, but creating a social basis for the development, the emergence of India, which has really freed up the animal spirit, so to say, of India. And that is what you see sometimes in the roads. I wouldn't necessarily call that as a sign of development, but there are visible signs of change and development in the remotest of areas. I come myself from a very somewhat backward state of India, and I was very surprised to visit my own village about 3 years ago, and to see the kind of transformation that led me to spontaneously tweet about the changes. So that's the kind of thing that you're seeing at the grassroots, people enthused, what the Prime Minister calls Jan Bhagidari, getting everybody on to the journey. You cannot build up India, develop India just by government schemes and policies alone. Every citizen of India has to contribute to it. Every aspect of the society must contribute to it.
Thank you. What would you have to say about the digital transformation that's happening?
That's actually quite a remarkable thing, which has caught not just the imagination of Indian people, but the visiting leaders have delved into it over the last several years. The basis of all this is the unique digital identity number that was created. The choice of this particular strategy was also thought over, because India, being at the level of socio-economic development that we are at, a digital identity card doesn't work for a country like India, because it's very costly, and for people to take on to those identity cards would require a certain support from the government, but it's not sustainable over a long period of time. Given the size of India, 1.4 billion people, large numbers of those very poor, the digital identity number felt to be the best strategy for India. But as it turned out, it actually is the best strategy for anybody. So not just for India, because it's costless. You don't have an identity card or a physical need to keep something in your pocket. It's in your phone, and you can make multiple applications for it. In India, this particular base, as it is called, the Aadhaar, which also means the base, has had two very different applications or results. One is on the social side. Today, thanks to the Aadhaar, we are able to provide food rations to 850 million poor in India directly, and in a most transparent way, without leakages and without, any possibility of a fraud. For example, in many countries, you would be aware, there are fictitious people, and we actually have been able to find those names over there which were fictitious and direct, therefore, the entire energy of the government to the real people and the most needy ones. In addition, we give 450 million people cash grants through the direct cash benefit transfer scheme. There is 500 million who get free medical insurance cover thanks to this. 95 million women get subsidies directly to the bank account for buying cooking gas. So I can go on the many areas in which it has been implemented. The fact of the matter is that this was an initiative that was thought out in 2014. It's called the JAM initiative. J stands for the Jan Dhan accounts, which is a zero balance bank account. A citizen of India could open a bank account without having any money in his pocket, only to receive money subsequently from the government. And 450 million people so far have opened bank accounts in India. There is hardly a family in India that's unbanked today as a result. The second part of it is the Aadhaar that I mentioned to you, 1.3 billion people registered and having a unique digital identity number. And the third part of it is the mobile phone, the spread of the network in India, the remarkable boom in the broadband connectivity and smartphone usage. The combination of these three allowed the government to implement this scheme and create a social safety net that I don't think any country in the world, which is a low middle income country, can deliver that kind of net to its most vulnerable and the underprivileged sections. And then there is the other side of this, which is the innovation, the enterprise side of it, where the universal payment interface, which was introduced recently in Sri Lanka also, has led India to become a leader in digital financial transactions. 46 out of 100 transactions every day take place in India. Just to put it in perspective, that's more than US, China, EU and Japan combined. There is, of course, the boom in the startup ecosystem. From almost non-existent startup ecosystem 8 years ago, we now have 117,000 registered startups, more than 100 of them unicorns. Unicorns are startups that have attained $1 billion value. There are, other applications that have allowed ease of living to be brought in, apart from the ease of doing business that I talk about. New products are being created. It is creating a new kind of innovative sort of revolution in India. And you would imagine, for example, if you had a Digi Yatra in India, an app, you would breeze past Indian airport security, check-in systems and the immigration. While I take 2 hours to go through it, you will be doing it in 15 minutes on an average. So that's the kind of, the impact that the unique digital identity has created in India. Enable the government on the one end to give the social safety net to the most vulnerable and raise their, own confidence in growth in India. It has freed up their resources to be devoted into other sectors of the economy that has led to almost wiping off the extreme poverty in India. As per the latest reports, only 2% of people fall in the extreme poverty category. The multidimensional poverty analysis that the UNDP has done puts Indian multidimensional poverty at around 12%. So it's a very significant change at that level. And then you have this new entrepreneurial spirit that has emerged out of the innovation ecosystem is sort of a boom that's happening, and the young talent is bringing new products every day in a manner that we had not seen. And that is changing the ease of living apart from the ease of doing business that we often talk about.
So we see education has a major part to play in this.
Well, education certainly has a major part to play in, but that is something that is also part of the educational reforms that the government has undertaken. Also, the government's emphasis on infrastructure also pertains to educational infrastructure. So you've had 2 colleges being built every day in India on average for the last 10 years. More than 7,000 colleges have been built. This is on top of the existing higher education infrastructure that existed in India, which has led to this vast mobility that we talk about of Indian talent across the world in different parts of the world. I was in Europe, and when I reached there in 2020, there was no appetite for a mobility agreement. We have already done 7 of them with European countries, and there are more lined up in this regard, because there's a demand for the Indian talent, not just in what we're doing in India, but all across the world. In the US, 4.5 million Indians live there and contribute to their economy. If you look at the top technology companies, most of the CEOs are Indians. So that tells you about the educational aspect of it, the talent potential of India. I think the world is becoming increasingly a workplace as much as it is a marketplace. And here, the talent and mobility will be a very, very significant factor in what we now call as re-globalization.
You worked on the trade and bilateral trade with Europe. Here we are going to have the economic and technological ACTA. What would you have to say about that? In which way would it benefit us, actually?
The intention is certainly to benefit both countries, more particularly Sri Lanka. If you look at how we have approached the entire thing, Sri Lanka was the first country we signed a free trade agreement with in 1998. That was the first for Sri Lanka, but also first for India. Not many people here would know. It came into force in 2000. It has been in operation for 23 years, and I have argued that it has benefited Sri Lanka more than India. A lot of people have disagreed, some, not many, and generally they are more vocal about it, but they do not back it up with the statistics. Let me put here some of the propositions to you. When in 2000 the FTA was signed, Sri Lanka exported $50 billion worth of goods to India. Today it does 1.1 billion, 22 times. India, 500 million was the export. India does 5 billion today, 10 times. Whose export is growing faster? If you look at the size of the economy, which would give you a sense of what the potential for export in a country would be, India is roughly about 50 times the GDP of Sri Lanka, while Sri Lanka's exports are only 1/5 of India. So, as compared to the Indian exports to Sri Lanka. There is also, a study that I have seen, which shows that the Sri Lankan exporters actually use 70% of their exports to India benefit from FTA, as opposed to 30% of Indian exports coming to Sri Lanka. My contention has been that if you look at any parameter, and I am willing to engage with anybody on this, there has been a significant benefit to both countries. And the intention of the original authors of this agreement, that Sri Lanka must benefit by India opening its market to Sri Lanka, has actually happened. The goal has been achieved. There are some problems, and which is where our lack of inexperience in 2000 or 98 on FTAs, the learning that has come from the 20 years of operation and negotiating other FTAs, allows us to improve further this particular basic paradigm of bringing benefits to Sri Lanka, opening Indian markets for Sri Lankans. And that is what the ETCA is about, not to expand anything, because already there are only 129 items in the Indian negative list for Sri Lankan exporters. So there is not much that we can open further for Sri Lanka in terms of the tariff lines that are open, as compared to Sri Lanka having kept roughly about 1,179 items in its negative list. So that will not change very significantly. What will change is that we will put in processes that doesn't allow Sri Lanka to be a conduit for dumping stuff into India from third countries, and therefore keep the free trade agreement focused on building capacities in India, allowing investments to come into Sri Lanka to target the Indian market and create more potential for Sri Lanka as it goes forward. So that is basically the ETCA is a course correction or a course improvement, so to say, rather than a massive new agreement.
Thank you, Your Excellency. If we have some questions, I know, could you keep this to the subject? We're talking economic agreements, development, not contentious political issues. So may I ask them to go forward with any questions? The floor is open, please. Any hands up?
Not much. I have either answered all the questions.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency.
Good afternoon.
I'm Prasad from National Television. Yeah. First,
Can you turn the volume up, please?
I think it's working. Yes, I'm Prasad from National Television. When we talk about the current developments in the Sri Lanka relations, especially the economic relations, a lot of talks are going on the energy connectivity and the land, the road and the transportation connectivity. Could you elaborate more on these two, the latest development on these two sectors?
See, when the India-Sri Lanka summit happened in July last year, the President's visit to New Delhi, we came up with a vision document whose central theme was connectivity. And connectivity is such a significant aspect of our relations because it generates economic activity by implementation of connectivity, and then it has a multiplier effect in terms of connecting societies, people, industries, markets. So that is, of course, the very, very key element. If I was to say, most of my preoccupation is on promoting that between India and Sri Lanka. And you specifically spoke about the two aspects, the energy and the land connectivity. Both are big game changer areas. In the field of energy particularly, we have a large number of projects. We have an oil pipeline connecting South India with Sri Lanka. We have an LNG supply line that we are talking about to bring LNG to Sri Lanka for use for production of energy, which will reduce costs here of energy. There is, of course, the grid interconnection that we are talking about, which is for interchange, exchange of electricity, export from India and export from Sri Lanka. Eventually, the huge potential that Sri Lanka has in terms of producing renewable energy, wind and solar, cannot be utilized simply by usage within Sri Lanka, and it requires an outlet for export to other parts of the world through India. And so this grid connectivity is actually focused on creating that public good that will then, create the motivation for others to step in and expand this particular aspect of our exchange. And there is, of course, the various private sector and government sector investments in Sri Lanka to promote the production of green energy. The reason why we think these two are now more prospective has also to do with India's growing capabilities. If you look at India's energy sector, the success that we have had in terms of producing renewable energy over the last 10 years has been the most remarkable. Just to tell you that India is the only G20 country, if you know what G20 is, the 20 big economies of the world, India is the only G20 country that is on track to implement its Paris climate commitments. We today have more than 45% of our energy resources coming from non-fossil sources, and this is a big leap over if you look at just 10 years ago where we were. And more importantly, we have revised our target to 50%, but our National Electricity Authority says by 2032, 68.4% of our energy capacity will come from non-fossil sources. We are on target to achieve 500 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity by 2030. So this entire boom, the fact that we produce, the solar power sector in India has grown by 30 times in the last 10 years, and we produce solar power at the lowest cost in the world. Maybe some parts of Saudi Arabia competes with us on that, but it is an up and down competition. So there is this new capacity that has emerged in India. On the other hand, the land bridge connectivity, the confidence emerges from the fact that our own infrastructure is now world class in terms of surface transport. If you look at what we are doing today, we build 30 kilometers of road highways, not roads, every day. 30 kilometers. Our target is to increase it to 40 kilometers. That is what we are targeting this year in 2024. So there is, as you know, a number of big infrastructure connectivity projects, land bridge projects have also been implemented in India. The most recently, the Atal Bridge in Mumbai, which is a 22-kilometer bridge. So there is this growing capacity in India. And in all of what we do, whether it is the unique digital identity, whether it is the energy sector or in the infrastructure sector, our effort has been that wherever we have capacities, we must contribute as far as possible, based on Sri Lanka's preferences, to contribute to their growth and development. That's, broadly speaking, my answer to your question.
Ayuwan, Mama Silo newspaper samagena.
Where are you, please? Okay, thank you.
Indiawa, Sri Lankawata Ayuwan, Mama Hirosha Deepani, Ceylon Today newspaper. මගේ ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි ඔබතුමාගෙන් අහන්නේ. ඉන්දියාව ලංකාවේ ආහාර සුරක්ෂිතතාවය වෙනුවෙන් බොහෝ කැපවීම් කරලා තියෙනවා. අපි ඒකට ස්තුතිවන්ත වෙනවා. එතකොට ඒකේ පළවෙනි ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි දඹුල්ල නගරේ ශීතාගාරයක්, විශාල ශීතාගාරයක් ඉදි කරන්න ආරම්භ කළා. ඒක කොවිඩ් වසංගතය නිසා සහ තව ප්‍රශ්න නිසා ඒක මග නැවතිලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට අපි ඒකට සම්බන්ධ ඇමතිවරුන්ගෙන් විමසීමක් කරාම දැන් ඒක මගක් දුරට කෙරීගෙන යනවා කියනවා. අපි ඒකට සම්බන්ධ වෙලා ගිහින් බලපුවාම සොයා බලපුවාම ඒක ඇත්තටම ඉදිරියට කෙරෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකට ඉන්දියානු රජයෙන් මිලියන 300ක ආධාර නැවත ගෙවිය යුතු නැති ආධාර ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට ඒකේ වර්තමාන තත්ත්වය ගැන ඔබතුමාගේ අදහස මොකක්ද? දෙවෙනි ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි තවදුරටත් ඉන්දියාව අපට ආහාර සුරක්ෂිතතාවය වෙනුවෙන් උදව් උපකාර කරනවා. ස්තුතියි.
Kumar, are you here? Where's Kumar Lopez? Will you just, there are other people who would like to know what the question is.
Yeah, actually, what is the question? I also don't understand much.
Yeah, we'll...
India has supported Sri Lanka for food security, so thank you. The question number one is in Dambulla, there is a chilling factory that has been started with 300 million rupee donation from India, not a loan, a donation. But it seems like with COVID-19 and subsequently with several other issues, it's stalled. When we inquire from the subject ministers, they seem to say the project is on ongoing. But however, during our investigations and when we checked, it seems like it is not, and it's stalled. So the question is, since it's a grant given by the Indian government, any idea about the progress of the freezing facility or the chilling facility for that? And the number two, the second question is
Freezing.
Chilling, yeah, freezer.
Okay.
Cold storage.
Cold storage.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second question is, will India continue to support in terms of securing the food security for Sri Lanka?
That's a specific question, perhaps unrelated to the topic that we are discussing, but I'll take more details from you on that, and I will check on what the status of it is. I know that the warehousing, this cold storage facility was created. The first time in my previous assignment, I think a couple of them was inaugurated as well in that area that you're talking about. But if they are not functioning well, we would like to look into it and see what the current situation is. So if you can separately offline share the details, we will examine that. On the broader question of food security, that's something that is definitely part of our conversation. Whether it is in the effort at agricultural modernization, whether it is in improving the capacity of the farmers to connect to the market, whether it is in the food processing sector, whether we talk about other types of activities such as dairy farming, whether it is in the case of fisheries, we are definitely committed, and we have a number of projects that we are either implementing or contemplating or will implement in the coming days in this sector. Food security is a global problem. It's not just a problem of Sri Lanka or India alone. So something that we want to work with all developing countries to promote. Our approach has been that whatever capacities we have, the first take on that would be for the developing countries, and among the developing countries, naturally, the first comes the neighbors. So neighborhood first policy of India, requires that we work with Sri Lanka first. In fact, my External Affairs Minister had once said, neighborhood first, but Sri Lanka first.
Commissioner, this is Joad Abin from News First. A question a bit away from the topic, but with the recent protests that were held by the Indian fishermen, two petitions were handed over to the Japan Deputy High Commission by Sri Lankan fishermen within a short period of time. And we were also informed that you held discussions with the Chief of Staff of the President, Sagar Ratnayaka. What are the steps that you've taken within this time period?
Look, it is not for me to take the steps. These are for the experts in this area who will take it. Of course, we discuss this issue on an ongoing basis. It's not something that has happened today. It has existed for many, many years, in fact, for centuries. So this is something that is an ongoing issue. We see this as an issue that needs resolution through conversations, discussions, and that is what we are striving for. Again, but this question is not related to India's story, reform, perform, transform. So I would request to ask questions on that area only. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
You have a follow-up one? Please go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Good afternoon.
Even Mike is not agreeing with you.
So there were ideas of sending fishermen towards the Pork Strait, Indian fishermen, and the Arabian Sea for training as well. Anything we could get from you on that?
We have a variety of options there. So it's something that we will have to discuss and jointly agree upon. I think a cooperative approach is certainly something that we would promote. We must also recognize that it is a humanitarian issue. It is not simply, it's a livelihood issue. These are poor farmers on both sides of the pork trade. And, this is a conversation that we will have with true earnest, with the desire to resolve the issue as best as we can. But as I said, this is not something that has happened today. In fact, there is a reducing incident of arrests by Sri Lanka over a longer period. If you compare with the period earlier from now, there has also been, people from Sri Lanka who cross over to the other side as well. And it makes sense, therefore, to create other types of livelihood activities that takes away this problem away and benefits the communities on both sides more. So there would be various ways in which this can be done. But as a diplomat, I wouldn't fish into fishing waters. I'd like to have the experts do it. The fishermen themselves come up with suggestions on that.
My name is...
Who is this, please?
Yes.
My name is Rasanjali Patirage. I am President of Disability Organization Joint Front. In 2012, census said 1.6 million persons with disabilities in Sri Lanka. Our major problem is we don't have accessible transport facility in Sri Lanka. Mostly India is supporting for our transport services and they are providing buses. Are there any mechanism to providing accessible buses to Sri Lanka in future?
Well, I think these buses that you're talking about, has the Sri Lankan government proposed it to us? No, I don't think so. The transport cooperation is an ongoing one. If you look at a different sector, for example, in the railways alone, since 2009, we have put in $1.2 billion worth of line of credit. And today, the entire stretch from Matara to Kankesanture has been either restored or rehabilitated or built by this line of credit. There have been multiple lines of credit that has allowed Sri Lanka to buy buses for the transportation purposes. Several buses, small and big ones, have been also gifted to communities over a period of time. I was personally involved with all three of these projects in my previous capacity, and I continue to be involved with it. So we're willing to work on it. I don't know whether there is a proposal from the government of Sri Lanka to implement a large, road transport project in association with us, but we would be happy to look into it if they were to approach us. Secondly, today in the world, we must look at urban transport in a different way. In India, we have from 2 metros 10 years ago, we now have 30 metros in India. You know what metros are, these subways, the underground and overhead trains which run for the passengers who commute every day. It is one, more very clean in terms of the energy that uses, and also it is cleaner in the sense that it allows us to take away the congestion in the roads in urban centers. And this is not just happening in the big cities. It began in Delhi many years ago, in I think around 2002 is when the construction for the Delhi metro began. But it is happening in tier 2, tier 3 cities in India now. And that is the way forward in my view.
I'm Joseph Sudarshan. I'm also representing a disability organization Joint Front. And in addition to her question, I can tell you that there is no single bus in Sri Lanka for access to persons with disabilities, and also the trains. At the same time that India is improved in technology to providing prosthetic and orthotic devices and the other assistive devices. So if there is any mechanism that transforming this technology to Sri Lanka, for the manufacturing, either the products can be improved the quality to provide in terms of access for persons with disabilities.
See, when you're talking about prospects, that depends on interest. It is not an open road to just, saying yes or no to it. If there are people here willing to work in this area and partner with Indian companies that have this know-how, knowledge, I think we would be very happy to share. As I said, our broader approach to Sri Lanka has been that wherever we can, we should come, whether it is in the form of investment or support in other forms for developmental purposes. So this is something that's very, very important that you're talking about. I mean, access to disabled or differently abled people into these, various means of transport is an important thing. I can tell you, for example, in India, we are building something like more than about 300 railway stations, modern railway stations, that would be very much friendly to this kind of requirement. And these are very modern railway stations. They would be something that really would be world-class or even better than world-class, that I can assure you. Some of them have already been built and they can be seen in places like Ayodhya or Varanasi, but others are under construction. And the progress on that has been very, very impressive. So we are ourselves emphasizing on this aspect increasingly. It's a legal requirement in India that we comply with all public buildings, all transport systems, and we will be happy to extend that if there is interest either in the private sector or the government sector in India, in Sri Lanka.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
This way.
Can you speak on a mic?
Sorry, just Inoshni from Verite Research. We're just wondering, in regards to encouraging structural reforms, what would you like to see panned out to encourage more FDI on a more competitive level playing field?
We are by nature not prescriptive.
Right.
That distinguishes us from some others in the world who tend to tell others what to do. We believe that Sri Lanka is a sovereign country and must take its own decisions based on its own interest. So for me to tell what we should do here in Sri Lanka would not be right. I can tell you what we are doing.
Perfect.
And I can, I would classify what we are doing in broadly 3 areas. One is the classical reforms, as they say, which is that, you change the system, make it more transparent, make it more productive, friendly to business in some ways. So these are the, reforms that the government has undertaken in the last 10 years. You have the goods and services tax that has turned India into a single market. Many years ago, when I was here, a lot of businessmen would ask me what would be the tax at the end point in India, and I couldn't tell him. Now I can, because I have one nation, one tax, one market. So there has been also similarly reforms in the insolvency and bankruptcy code, which has been a very significant reform in India, which has allowed sick companies to be, sort of phased out or taken over through a process that allows bad investments to, disappear, and the banks which have given loan also tend to be therefore more healthy as a result. There has been a consistent work to improve the health of the banks, which were over-leveraged. The Indian private investors were over-leveraged, and that has, over a period of, fiscal and, monetary stability that we have maintained, controlled inflation very, very diligently. All this has changed in India. So this is the classical aspect of reform. The second part of the reform, I call them micro-reforms. 1,500 laws in India have been allowed to go out of the statute books because they were not needed. 40,000 compliances have been either removed or simplified. If you look at the World Bank Doing Business Index, we were able to systematically attack each criteria and improve our points on that. And within a period of, before it went out of use, the World Bank itself stopped it, we have been able to leap 77 places in the Doing Business Index in 3 years. And what we've done in parallel in India is that we have started a competitive sort of a process among the states in India. We have 27 states in India, and they are all now in competition to be ranked under this system of who is the best in terms of ease of doing business. And this very virtuous, sort of an upwardly virtuous cycle that has been created has led to states actually competing, improving processes, and making it easier for people to enter into a business, start operation, and start fully functioning within the state. So, generally people talk about single window scheme, but this is much better than the single window scheme. The single window scheme doesn't work generally. This is the one that we followed a retail mode of support. So you have this relationship manager in banks. We have now relationship managers for the investors. So you basically come to India, you give it one person who is basically your person who takes you around all the hoops that are there. And the third part of this is the being really very, very effective in my view, is the range of initiatives that you see in other developed countries, also a lot of initiatives rolling out. But in India we began in 2015, first with the mobile phone sector. From becoming a country that imported $14 billion worth of mobiles, we are now exporting $14 billion of mobile in India in a span of about 6 to 7 years. Apple is now manufacturing in India and actually increasing its share of its global output from India every year, and it's about 20-25% today, and it's going to grow. And this was based on what we call the production linked incentive scheme. The PLI scheme, as we call it in short. This is basically a scheme now that we have extended it to initially to 13 sectors, but 3-4 more sectors have been added, and even the semiconductor mission of India is run under this scheme. Initially it had $26 billion, but now the outlay is much bigger. And basically what it does is that it incentivizes an existing investor in India or a new investor to increase production under a formula that the government has given. And if you do that successfully within the period, you have to first subscribe to that scheme, and when you do it, the government pays you money. So for example, you might, if you follow Indian development, in the last week we had 3 big investments in the semiconductor chip manufacturing in India. 2 by the Tatas and another by a third company. The government would be actually putting in 50% of the investment that they're going to make to enable that to happen. And we are not the only ones now doing it. There is a Inflation Reduction Act in the US that incentivizes green production. There are similar schemes that have existed in the US before also, and with a different name, and the frame was different, but and the name was different, but actually it did exactly this. And in the EU also they are doing it. So the point is that getting investment is not easy. It's not also a given. Large markets are not necessarily attractive markets, and small market is not necessarily a disadvantage. So what you need to do is to create an ecosystem through structural reforms that you talked about, that I said, the classical ones, and then we have these micro management reforms, which when you remove the laws that are not needed, regulations are simplified or removed from the statutes, and then you create this very, very strong incentive schemes of subsidies or whatever you call them. But there are various schemes in place all around the world to do that. So it's a hard work. It's a very steep learning curve for a country. In 1991, before 1991, I'm old enough to remember that people used to say that if you open up, you will invite the East India Company again to take over the country. That didn't happen when we opened up in 91. We're still an independent sovereign country and still seeking investments from countries around the world. So I think we need to work probably in these lines, but I would not want to tell Sri Lanka what it needs to do.
Is from Economy Next, Your Excellency. Here. What are the steps India has been to ensure the timely delivery of timely delivery of the projects and investment in Sri Lanka? Because in the past we have seen the criticisms are like India is locking the project, but they never do it on time. For instance, the oil tank farm Mattala in 2016. So in future, the pipeline project and other projects, what are the steps India is taking to ensure the projects are implemented on time?
You see, the examples you gave are not the right one. Very simply, because nobody gave us the tank farms. The tank farms were not with us. There was no agreement. Now we have an agreement. Now we have a plan. Whether the other thing that you mentioned was Matala. I don't know when Matala was given. I'm still asking for it. So these examples, but I do accept that there may have been delays in implementing projects in the past. But if you look at the last few years, we have implemented quite a few. I just mentioned the railway projects, $1.2 billion worth of this railway line that will allow Colombo, Jaffna to be done in 5 to 6 hours. I have seen the state of these tracks then and even now in some segments, and when you now, once it is fully rehabilitated, when you travel, it will be a different experience. Our capabilities in India have grown in terms of our own pace of implementation. We were not setting up 2 colleges every day, as we are doing over the last 10 years. Before that, we were not, setting up, building 30 kilometers of highway every day as we are now doing. So once this ability in India has emerged, I think you will see more and more of that in terms of the project implementation in Sri Lanka. I can tell you the grid interconnection was first conceived in 2005. We have only taken first steps now the last week. All these years we were just talking. I mean, and it's not that India is the only one to, take the blame. There is also partially the blame on the other side because we just were talking, not doing enough. Now we are trying to implement it. So you talk about the NTPC solar power project. This was started by me in 2007, never got off the ground. After when we came to the point of implementing the coal power plant, the Sri Lankan government decided not to do it. So, it's not always that it's the slow pace that really holds up the implementation of the project. There are various factors that needs to be taken care of also on the Sri Lankan end for it to happen faster. But as I said, we are ready to take the blame because we didn't have the kind of capability earlier that we now think we have. And today, India is implementing 600 projects in 76 countries around the world. We built the 50,000 houses in 5 years in Northern Province, 45,000 to be exact. We have, if you look at the number of projects that existed when I came here in 2007, 0. When I left at that time, it had already grown to about 50 in 3 years. Today, we have roughly about the same number of projects under implementation or, under consideration. So you will think that, I take your point that we were not implementing necessarily very, very fast, but we were not doing it in India either. The fact that we are now a more capable country in terms of implementation will reflect in our project implementation abroad as well.
Yes, thank you. I had 2 questions and on the India story, and one you answered, that was the insights on how did you attract investment and direct foreign investment, the macro, the micro, and the reforms, law and regulations. It was very, very useful. We would like to also have some insight. We are a very closed economy, if you take it by any measure. India was a closed economy if you go a few decades back, and you were able to basically transform it. If you can give us some insight, because the public sector has a huge role to play in it, and some insights on how that transformation of the public sector kept a pace to create what you have created in India today, that might be very helpful for us.
There are a number of things that comes to my mind to answer your question. We have divested to some extent. We have done privatization in India to some extent. I mean, the most recent example of privatization in India was Air India was sold out to the Tatas. But that's one aspect of how you create efficiencies. The second is the attention, the system that we put in place for regular monitoring. And somebody initially asked whether it is the leadership, you asked whether it is the leadership. I think there is definite leadership factor in India's transformation. We have today a program called Gati Shakti. I think most Sinhalese would understand it. Gati Shakti. Gati means speed, Shakti means power. So the speed, power. Prime Minister talks about size, scale and speed. He wants to do everything in that three dimension, the size, scale and speed. So the Gati Shakti is about creating that speed, in a very, very strong way, so to say. This is a mechanism of supervision of existing projects on an ongoing basis at the highest level, which allows this any problems or any impediments in the way. Every nation has its own cobwebs, it has its own fears, it has its own sort of imagined sort of issues in the mind. And how do you address them and progress things at a very, very fast pace? So when I said we built 30 kilometers of road, we were building 11 kilometers of road. How has 11 to 30 happened? It is Gati Shakti. I would urge everybody to read that program. It is something that has been hugely successful. And at the very top, the Prime Minister provides the leadership through what is called the Pragati meetings. Pragati means progress. And he does this himself. He actually sits at the helm and listens to reports and various problems in the project. And he does this, by the way, for projects in Sri Lanka and other countries as well. That is how we are able to now implement projects much faster. We are able to put more money into these projects at the right time to be able to do it. So there would be, one I think is that the public sector, by what you mean is the government being in the business. The Prime Minister says the government has no business to be in business. And I think this is not just the Prime Minister saying, a large part of the world believes in it and says this repeatedly. We have come to realize it now. Similarly, and then there are these, the existing companies that have the basic potential to perform, but because of the kind of impediments or the past fears, etc., have not been able to perform to a certain level, then are provided, that strength through the Gati Shakti. And that is why the National Highway Authority of India is able to do things better. We are building, we have constructed tunnels in the Himalayas that we had never built before. Our infrastructure investment itself has increased manifold. It's about 3 to 4 times what it used to be earlier. A huge investment in infrastructure has been behind it. And that has created also the incentive for not just the private sector, but the public sector to just pool in that resource, get in there and make money and profit out of it. So I wouldn't say that all public sectors have been reformed to become profit-making, but many are. But many that are not needed to be run by the government have also to be divested, and which we have done also, like with the case of Air India is the most important example.
I think, Your Excellency, do we have time for one more question?
Yes.
I have time, myself.
This is Sulochana from Ceylon Today newspaper. It's regarding this ferry service. We have been given a countdown saying it's going to start this month, this week, and then suddenly we were told that the Indian government has to decide and we are just ready for it. And why is the delay on that? And also...
So can you repeat the question, please?
The ferry service between Sri Lanka and Nagapattinam, I think. We were given a countdown about it, saying that it's going to start this month, this week and stuff, and then we look like it's not ready, and then the Indians have to decide it. And the other one is basically about the renewable energy project. I was told that you all take only just one approval. Is that true in India, if in any investors? want to do a renewable energy project, they will have to take just one approval from the government. Is that true? And if so, we know Adani is here for the last 2 years and still working, trying to get the approvals. Can you update on those?
See, when you said one approval, you mean the single window scheme.
From the government sector, to get an approval for an investor. Is that true?
No, I don't think there is this one approval process, but it's an expedited approval. As I said, the Gati Shakti actually addresses this. So it makes sure that it is done in a very, very speedy way. That whatever is necessary, whether it is, India is a federal system, so you have a lot of powers with the state governments. When it comes to provision of utilities, some taxes issues are also there. Many permits are provided by the state government. So it's not just the central government that can just say yes and things get done. So it's a rather complex process. And we have come round to a point where we are able to go from intention to manufacturing in a very short period of time. I'll give you an example of a project that I personally handled. On 19th of November 2020, the Prime Minister of Luxembourg proposed an investment to our Prime Minister. Within 10 days, this investor was in India. By the time he came back, 20 days later, he had the joint venture agreement. In March, he started assembling the product that he wanted to manufacture. And by September, he started manufacturing. So less than 365 days from a political level intention to actual production. So this may not be the case with every single of our investment proposals, but this is just to give you one example that we're doing it at a very fast pace in a focused way. A combination of factors are put into play. So renewable energy boom, when I say there's 30 times in last 8 to 10 years, it hasn't happened without very, very quick approvals. And the Gati Shakti is one of the biggest reasons for it, because it enables many of the critical areas, the focus areas of the government related to infrastructure, and energy is an important element of infrastructure, to be approved very quickly. On the ferry service, I think the intention both of the government of Sri Lanka and India is to start it quickly. The problem is, frankly speaking, the high fare that exists, the cost of, the normal ticket that anybody will charge is very high. And so there is a need to subsidize it. On our side, we have taken a decision to do so. We'll be paying a very large amount of money. It will be in millions of Sri Lankan rupees every day that we would be paying to make that trip economically viable. And we are also, I think the government of Sri Lanka has taken some decisions to give some concessions. So in combination, it is possible now to run the ferry. But so far we have not succeeded. Believe me, every week I review it, and we want to start it at the quickest. I am hopeful before the end of this month, this ferry service begins. We are in parallel working on the more viable one, in my view, and more traditional and historical one, which is the Telemanar Rameshwaram ferry. And that is something on which the expression of interest has been issued by the Shipping Corporation of India. And it's a much broader sort of an expression of interest, where it doesn't only ask for a ferry service provider, but also if there is an interest in developing port facilities, on both ends, and also, if possible, to look at destinations beyond this, so to make it more viable. Because just traveling between one point to the other point may not be that economical at times, particularly if we were to raise frequency and number of operators. So adding multiple destinations, which are also similarly required to be linked for the similar type of clientele, could be a useful mechanism. So we are working on ferry service connectivity very, very diligently, I can tell you. As I said, every week I review it.
Thank you. Your Excellency, I'd like to thank you on behalf of all those who are here and for answering our questions so spontaneously and sincerely. Let me thank the hotel too for partnering us on this occasion. And
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.